Imagine a woman who built a hotel empire from scratch walks into one of her luxury resorts, expecting the welcome she promised her guests. Instead, she is turned away, not because she can't pay the exorbitant prices, but because she doesn't fit the image her staff were trained to serve. What happens next? She doesn't leave in a huff. She digs deep, uncovers a rotten core of greed and exclusion, and wages a war that shakes her company and the entire hospitality industry. This is the story of Elena Vasquez, a Latina CEO who turned a single insult into a revolution. Betrayal, grit, and a fight for justice. This is a story you won't soon forget. Elena Vasquez stands in her penthouse office on the 40th floor of a sleek Miami tower, the ocean stretching out like an endless blue canvas beyond her floor-to-ceiling windows. At 47, she is the founder and CEO of Vance Luxury Resorts, owner of 27 luxury properties spanning 3 continents. She started with a shabby beachside motel in Key West, bought with every penny she saved from years of waitressing and grit. Now her name is synonymous with luxury: marble lobbies, infinity pools, Michelin-starred restaurants. But Elena is more than just a businesswoman. She is an icon, a Latina who has broken into a world of silver spoons and secret handshakes. She has vowed that her hotels will be different, open to anyone who can afford it, regardless of their skin color, accent, or story. The vow felt like a distant memory as she stared at the email glowing on her laptop. It was simple, direct, and cut deeper than she expected. Dear Mrs. Vance, I arrived at your South Beach resort last week, desperate to book the penthouse suite. I am a 34-year-old tech founder who can afford it. But your staff barely looked at me. They assumed I couldn't afford it because I was black. I was shoved into a basic room while a white guest behind me was given a tour of the suites. I admired your brand for what I thought it stood for. I was wrong. Best regards, Marcus Reed. Eleanor's fingers hovered over the keys, her pulse quickening. This wasn't just a complaint. It was a punch in the gut for everything she'd fought for. She leaned back in her leather chair, the Miami heat pressing against the glass. Elena had grown up in a cramped apartment in Hialeah, her parents Cuban immigrants who mopped floors and flipped burgers to keep the lights on. She'd been the kid in second-hand clothes, mocked for her accent, overlooked by teachers who didn't see her potential. Vance Luxury Resorts wasn't just a business. It was her defiance against that world, a promise that money, not prejudice, would open doors. But here was Marcus Reed, a man who had earned his position, telling her that promise was a lie. She grabbed the phone and dialed Javier Ortiz, her assistant of 8 years. Javier, she said, her voice strained, book me a flight to Miami tomorrow, first thing in the morning, and keep it a secret. No corporate jets, no announcements. Javier's voice came through the line, steady but curious. Business or personal, boss? Elena exhaled. Both. I'll go in secret. There was a pause. Javier knew her well enough to sense the storm brewing. South Beach, he guessed. Yeah, she said. I need to see for myself what's going on. He didn't push any further. The flight is at 6 a.m. I'll have a car waiting at MIA. Anything else? Elena glanced at the email again. Not yet, but this won't end with a visit. She hung up, her mind already racing. If her people were turning away guests like Marcus, then something was rotten, and she was going to tear it down by the roots. The next morning, Elena stepped off a commercial flight into the humid chaos of Miami International Airport. She had swapped her usual tailored suits for a simple knee-length white cotton sundress, paired with flat sandals and a straw hat. No Rolex, no diamond studs, just a plain leather cross-body bag. She looked like a tourist, not a billionaire. She rented a nondescript Toyota from the airport parking lot and drove to Vance Luxury's South Beach resort, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The building loomed ahead, 10 stories of glass and steel, its entrance framed by palm trees and a red carpet that screamed exclusivity. She parked a block away, took a deep breath, and walked in. The lobby washed over her like a wave, the cool air smelling of jasmine and sea salt, chandeliers dripping with crystal and the soft tinkle of champagne flutes. Guests in designer polo shirts and flowing dresses moved through the space, their voices a soft hum of wealth. Eleanor approached the front desk, where a young man, Tyler by his name tag, was typing on a sleek terminal. She smiled, keeping her tone light. "Hello, I'd like to inquire about the penthouse suite. Is it available?" Tyler's eyes slid up, then down her frame, her dress, her lack of jewelry. His smile was polite but fragile. "The penthouse, it's pretty exclusive. Do you have a reservation?" "No," Eleanor said, leaning casually against the counter. "I hope to see it and book a room today." Tyler's fingers hesitated on the keyboard, his gaze lingering for more than a beat. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it's not available right now. We have some beautiful ocean view rooms I can show you." Eleanor tilted her head, catching a glimpse of a white couple in flip-flops and shorts entering behind her. Before she could reply, a tall, slicked-back, immaculately pressed suit manager swooped in beside them. "Mr. and Mrs. Dawson, it's nice to see you again. The penthouse is ready for a tour if you'd like." Eleanor's chest tightened. "Interesting," she said loudly, turning back to Tyler. "They don't seem to have reservations either." Tyler's smile faltered, a blush creeping up his neck. "They're regulars. We have them on file. It's standard procedure." Eleanor nodded, stepping back. "Okay, thanks anyway." She didn't argue or flaunt her title. Instead, she crossed the lobby and sank into a cushioned armchair near a towering fern, her eyes scanning the room. Over the next hour, she watched. A black woman in a sharp blazer was offered a mid-range room despite asking about a suite. An Asian couple with Louis Vuitton luggage was politely ignored until they pressed. Meanwhile, white guests, even those in cargo shorts, were greeted with smiles, upgrades, and glasses of bubbly champagne. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. Eleanor left the resort and crossed Ocean Drive to a small Cuban cafe. The smell of espresso and fried plantains calmed her as she ordered a cordial. She sat at a table by the window, the gleaming facade of the resort looming before her, sipping her bitter coffee as her mind raced. This wasn't a coincidence or a bad day. It was intentional. Her company, her dream, had been hijacked by a system she never approved. She pulled out her phone and called Javier back. "I need a test," she said, her voice low. "Find a white man, mid-30s, polite but not flashy. Send them in to ask for the penthouse. Take notes." Javier didn't miss a beat. "I have someone in mind. He'll be there in 30 minutes. Eleanor hung up, her resolve hardening. She wasn't just angry. She was ready to fight. Half an hour later, a man stepped out of an Uber across the street. Ethan Carter, a friend of Javier's from college, was blonde, slim, wearing a linen shirt and loafers. He carried himself with a quiet confidence. Eleanor watched from the cafe as he entered the resort. The change was immediate. Tyler greeted him with a bright smile. The manager, Gregory Holt, whom she now recognized from his file, appeared within seconds. "Welcome, sir. Penthouse, let me show you around." Ethan nodded, playing his part, and within minutes he was escorted upstairs. Eleanor's phone buzzed, a video link from Javier. She flipped it open, watching as Gregory coddled Ethan, offering champagne and detailing the suite's amenities. The same suite she'd been told was unavailable. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her mug, the ceramic warm against her skin. This was irrefutable evidence on ice. But it wasn't enough. She needed to know who had poisoned her company with this filth. That night, in a modest hotel room a few miles from the resort, she pored over employee files on her laptop. Gregory Holt's name kept popping up. 15 years at Vance Luxury Resorts, stellar sales record, but buried in old performance reviews were vague notes, prioritized high-end clients, selective with guest interactions. She dug deeper, finding a pattern of complaints from minority guests that were quietly dismissed. Gregory wasn't just a bad apple. He was the architect of this mess. The next morning, Eleanor didn't bother with a disguise. She entered the South Beach resort in a tailored black blazer and high heels, her presence radiating authority. Tyler's jaw dropped as she swept past the front desk, his ma'am cut off by her footsteps. She pushed open Gregory's office door without knocking. He looked up from his desk, a glass of scotch in his hand despite the early hour, and froze. "Miss Vance," he said, standing quickly. "I didn't expect." "Obviously," she interrupted, tossing the video file onto his desk. "Explain this." Gregory's eyes glanced at the screen as the footage played, her rejection, Ethan's red carpet treatment. He forced a smile. "This is a misunderstanding. We prioritize based on customer history, loyalty." "Don't lie to me," Eleanor snapped, her voice cutting through his excuses. "I built this company to welcome anyone who could afford it. You turned it into a closed community for the right kind of people." Gregory straightened, his mask slipping. "With respect, Ms. Vance, luxury has an image. Our customers expect a certain level of class. We can't cater to everyone." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "You mean you wouldn't serve the likes of me or Marcus Reed?" Gregory's lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't deny it. "I'm done here," she said, turning toward the door. "You're going to regret this," he called after her. "The board won't like it." She did not turn back. 2 days later, Eleanor stood in the conference room of Vance Luxury's New York headquarters, the Manhattan skyline a gray smudge outside. The board of directors, a dozen men and women in suits worth more than most people's rent, sat around a mahogany table, their expressions a mix of curiosity and annoyance. She wasted no time. "We have a problem," she began, her voice steady. "Our South Beach resort is discriminating against guests based on race and appearance. I've seen it firsthand." She nodded to Javier, who dimmed the lights and started the video. The room watched in silence, her rejection, Ethan's welcome, the stark contrast undeniably stark. When it was over, she dropped the next bomb. "And here's what I found in Gregory Holt's email." The screen flickered again, displaying the messages Javier had pulled from the company's servers. "Focus on high-value files, avoid time wasters," one message read. The language was coded, but the intent was clear. A murmur spread through the room. Paul Grayson, a silver-haired board member who had been a shareholder in the company since its early days, cleared his throat. "Eleanor, this is troubling, but firing a top executive could damage our image. Strong sales are thanks to people like Gregory." Eleanor looked him straight in the eye. "Our image is rotten, Paul. Guests like Marcus Reed won't come back, and they're telling others why." Another board member, Clara Newen from marketing, chimed in. "If this gets out, we're going to be in for a PR nightmare. Boycotts, hashtags, everything." Eleanor nodded. "That's why we're acting now. I fired Gregory, but that wasn't enough. We need an audit of all properties, mandatory equity training, and a public statement right now." Paul frowned. "It's a risk. Luxury thrives on exclusivity. Too much change could alienate our base." Eleanor leaned forward. "Monopoly is based on money, not skin color. If we don't fix this, we'll lose more than a few rich snobs. We'll lose our souls." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. The board voted 8-4 in favor of her plan. Gregory was dismissed, the audit was greenlit, and Eleanor was given 48 hours to draft a public response. That night, she called Marcus Reed from her hotel room, the city lights flashing outside. "Marcus, this is Eleanor Vance," she said. "I got your email. I apologize, and I'm working on it." He was silent for a moment, then said, "I've heard apologies before. Show me the real thing." She smiled weakly. "Watch me do it." The next day, she stood before a packed press conference in Miami, cameras flashing, microphones pointed. "Vance Luxury Resorts has failed our guests," she declared. "We have found systemic bias at our South Beach resort, and we are admitting it." She outlined reforms, new leadership at South Beach, a diversity task force, zero-tolerance policies for discriminatory behavior. "This isn't just about us," she added, her voice rising. "It's about an industry that has hidden behind exclusivity for too long. We are setting a new standard that every luxury brand must follow or be left behind." The room erupted, reporters shouting questions, some clapping, others scribbling furiously. Twitter exploded, #VanceReform trending within hours, with guests sharing their own stories of bias at high-end hotels. Boycotts were hatched, but there were also compliments. Marcus Reed tweeted, "She's keeping her word. Respect." Gregory Holt watched from his apartment, his television blaring the press conference, his phone stopped ringing, his once vast network silent. He threw his glass of scotch against the wall, the shattering sound echoing in the empty room. He had lost everything, his job, his reputation, his power. Eleanor had won, and the sting was unbearable. Meanwhile, Eleanor stood in her office a few days later, reviewing the initial audit reports. Other properties showed similar patterns, subtle, coded, but real. She wasn't surprised, just more determined. She offered Marcus a free vacation, which he accepted, texting, "It's different now." Thanks. Months passed, and the South Beach resort transformed. Newly trained staff greeted every guest with warmth. Sales dipped during the scandal, but have since rebounded, buoyed by a wave of customers appreciative of the change. Eleanor stood on the resort's rooftop one evening, the ocean breeze blowing through her hair. She had won the battle, but the war was not over. Other CEOs called, some defensive, others curious. Her reforms were spreading. She smiled weakly. This was only the beginning. So what do you think? Do you fight like Eleanor? Let us know below and hit that subscribe button for the hidden story. We have many stories of courage and change coming your way. The fight is far from over.